Welcome to tonight's Tanya class. We are studying chapter 27, Perek Chav Zayin, in the last section of Tanya called Igeret Hakodesh. Tonight is also a pre-Gimmul Tamuz Farbrengen, which by divine providence, the Tanya chapter 27 we're talking about is going to deal with all the issues that we're going to be discussing about the pre-Gimmul Tamuz Farbrengen. So again, the class is primarily on chapter 27, Perek Chav Zayin of Tanya, Igeret Hakodesh, but it's also Gimmul Tamuz Farbrengen. So we're going to start off by discussing some questions that we have about Gimmul Tamuz coming up. We know that next, not this Shabbat, but the one after that is going to be the third day of Tammuz, which is 25 years since the Rebbe passed away. And there's a lot of questions out there, especially in our Chabad house, all over. People want to know. Some of the questions we brought up was, like, for example, what is a Rebbe? What is a Rebbe? Is a rabbi? What is a Rebbe? That's number one. Next question we brought up was, can anyone be a Chasid? We know there's a Rebbe. Now, usually when you have a teacher, you have a student. So a educator and a student. Here you have a Rebbe. The student is called a Chosid. That's the name. And the question is, could anyone be a Chosid? The next question, which we're going to discuss, which we'll hopefully get out of this chapter, is, how can you live a spiritual life? That's the next question. And then the last question, come inside. The last question we're going to discuss is the secret to how Chabad is growing so strong since Gimmul Tamuz. Okay, so that is the different questions we have in this chapter. About Gimmul Tamuz, and that's going to be the Farbrengen part, which we will get out from God willing from this chapter. So we are right now in chapter 27, Perek Chav Zayin in Igeret Hakodesh. And as always, I tell you that since the Tanya is the Bible of mysticism, so every single chapter has its own message on its own right, even though ultimately everything is really connected, but it has its own subject matter, and you walk away with something complete from the class. I always try to find one main theme that runs through the chapter, something that's hard because there's many themes, but I think the main theme, and in relation to, especially as we're doing this as a Farbrengen for Gimmul Tamuz, I think the theme of this chapter is that our relationship with the Rebbe is now even stronger. And that's obviously a great thing to know, that the Rebbe passed away, Gimmul Tamuz, 25 years ago, and we're saying is that our relationship with the Rebbe is even stronger. So actually, by divine providence, as you know, we study here, Tanya, every week we study one chapter. And this class has been going on for many years. And we're getting there. We finished the first section of Tanya, the second one, the third, the fourth. Mind you, think about it, the first section of Tanya had 53 chapters. Now we didn't do a class every single week, so that alone is at least a year, if not more.
I was young then.
Well, weren't we all? But now you're wiser, God willing.
Yeah.
So, by divine providence, this chapter 27, is actually a letter of comfort that the Alter Rebbe himself wrote to the chasidim of a famous Hasidic leader, and his name was Reb Mendel of Vitebsk. You know, in those days, people had first names, Mendel, which you're all familiar with the name Mendel. They didn't have last names like we have today, but their last name was based on which city they're from. So he was called Mendel of Vitebsk, or he had another name, Mendel of Horodak. These are different cities out there in Russia in those days. So what happened was, we all know the first Hasidic leader was the Baal Shem Tov. Afterwards was the Maggid of Mezrich, and afterwards in the Chabad dynasty started with the Alter Rebbe, and then the Chabad dynasty up until the Rebbe. But at that time, the Maggid of Mezrich had many students, so the Baal Shem Tov. One of his key students, one of his leading students, one of his big students, was Reb Mendel of Vitebsk. Now when the Maggid passed away, so the people made him the Rebbe. And the Alter Rebbe, who wrote the Tanya, was also a student of Reb Mendel of Vitebsk. And Reb Mendel of Vitebsk, when he went to Israel, the Alter Rebbe wanted very much to go with him. What happened was the Chassidim of the Alter Rebbe begged him not to go because they need a Rebbe with them. So he stayed. Now, but he was still connected to him on a spiritual level. After Reb Mendel of Vitebsk, Reb Mendel Horodak passed away, so what happened? The people were devastated. So the Alter Rebbe wrote a letter of comfort to them, which we're going to be studying tonight. And I felt like there's no better way to really get a glimpse of what Gimmul Tamuz is than to hearing it from what the Alter Rebbe has to say. I mean, anyone can share any thoughts and ideas. It's great. It's wonderful. But you can't get better than the Alter himself. He's the author of the Tanya and the Shulchan Aruch. He's the first Chabad rabbi, and if he is sharing words of comfort to the leader of that generation, Reb Mendel of Vitebsk, as words of comfort, it's probably the best comfort that we can possibly get by studying this powerful writing from the Alter Rebbe. So the Alter Rebbe writes to them like this. The fact is, why were they so distraught and so in pain and so at loss when their master passed away? So the Alter Rebbe explains. Very simple. Because when Reb Mendel of Vitebsk was alive, any Chosid, which refers to a student of a Rebbe, he was their Rebbe, any Chosid, received from his Rebbe several things. So you received in the field of spirituality, and in the field of physical materialism. Where did they receive? So on a spiritual level, all this Torah teachings. You're dealing with holy people, godly people, and when they taught Torah, it was something to hear, inspiring, intriguing, connecting you to God. So on a Torah level. B, they taught you how to serve Hashem. And they guided you how to serve Hashem. They were your mentor how to serve God, through prayer, through mitzvot, etc. So that's on a spiritual level. Also on a physical level, they gave blessings. And if you have the Rebbe's blessing, guess what? Life is going to be great. Or they would give you advice, business advice. And obviously they succeeded based on his advice. So here they lost all that. So they thought. So the Alter writes to them this letter to comfort them. And he tells them like this. Now, it's interesting the way this chapter of Tanya, which is the letter to the students, it's similar to the one we studied last week, where the Alter begins with, I call it raw Kabbalah, raw Zohar, so it's abstract stuff, and I'll try to explain the best I can, and then the Alter Rebbe himself explains this piece of Zohar and this piece of Kabbalah. So the Alter Rebbe starts off like this. He starts off based on a teaching of our sages. The teaching of our sages says like this, and the expression that's used, I'll say it in Hebrew and I'll translate it. It says, "Deshbek chayim l'chol chai." That means when a holy person passes away, so the Deshbek, he leaves over, what does he leave over? He leaves over chayim, life, l'chol chai, to all the people who are living. Think about this. A holy man passes away, so he leaves over what? Life to the people that are living. So the simple meaning is, he leaves over life to the people living, they're living. He didn't leave over life, they were living before he passed away too. So what does it mean he's leaving over life to the people that are living? So obviously we have to understand what does life mean. So we're not referring to the life of the chasidim that he leaves over, they had their life. What we're referring to, he leaves over his life. But the question is, he leaves over his life, he died, he passed away, he left, he's not alive anymore. So what does it mean he lives over his life? So the Alter brings from the Zohar that says, what is life? So we all know on a physical level, what is life? When the heart rate is working, right, your heart is beating, you're alive. The heart stops, you're not alive. And that's obviously on a physical, scientific, materialistic, down-to-earth level. But we all know that there's something which is called spiritual life. What is spiritual life? Spiritual life is comprised of three components. There's three components of spiritual life. If you have these three components, and these three components are working for you, and they're alive within you, then you're spiritually alive. What are the three components? Component number one is emunah, faith. And the Alter Rebbe quotes from the Torah, where in the verse where it speaks of faith, it says the word chayim. So what does faith mean? That means like this. We all live in this physical world. So we get up, we go through our day, etc. Because you can operate as a machine, you can operate as a functioning person surviving, or you can operate with the knowledge, awareness, and reality and clarity that who created the world? Hashem. Who runs the world? Hashem. Therefore, everything that's happening to me, that happened, is going to happen to me, is by who's running it? Me? No, oh my gosh, you guys are excellent. I love it. That's good. Who created it all? Who runs? Hashem runs it all. That's called emunah. Emunah is belief that Hashem created the world, runs the world, maintains the world. Everything that's happening in my life is coming from Hashem. Now think about that for a second. If you live a life where you're in charge, when things aren't going the way you want them to, what happens? You panic, you're upset, you're nervous, anxiety, you're worried, all the negative emotions come in. But when who's in charge? When God's in charge, then what are you worried about? There's nothing to worry about. It's not my world. It's God's world. He planned it. Life is great. All the worry, all the anxiety, all the nervousness, all the skepticism, all goes out. What kind of life? Life is great. God's in charge. It's all good. It's all good. So living a life of emunah is really, really a great life to live. Now, a tzaddik, that's 101. That's basics. That's the way a tzaddik lives. A tzaddik life is about emunah, and a tzaddik also inspires us to live with emunah. He's our mentor, what it means to live a life of faith. So that is one component of life. If you have emunah, and you have it well, you've accomplished a third of your spiritual life. Now it's not easy, because at times our emunah gets challenged, and questioned, and threatened, and we go through a challenge. But, and again, we're not going to go into a whole class in emunah right now. There's hundreds and thousands of books and pages written about the topic of emunah. It's something which is a very, very well-written topic, both in, obviously for sure it started out in Hebrew, but even in English, there's many books on faith. Living a life of faith is a subject in itself, but the general idea is that a life of a tzaddik is life of emunah. That's 1/3 of living. What's the second concept, the second idea, the second third? That's living a life of yiras Hashem. What does yiras Hashem mean? So yira literally gets translated to be in awe of Hashem. What does that mean? It means like this. When you're standing in the presence of something profound and awesome, you're like, whoa. Like if you go on a trip and you see like a piece of nature that's like mind-blowing and breathtaking, like a huge, I don't know, maybe 100-ton rock hanging mid-air, and the scenery, right?
Grand Canyon,
there you go. Whoa, that's awesome. Now I'm giving you examples, or you see certain waterfalls. I'm giving you an example of physical things, but these are all finite things. God's infinite. So could you imagine you're in the presence, we are in the presence of God, but could you imagine that you're cognizant and you're aware that you're in the presence of God? Guess what happens? When you're in the presence of God and you have yiras Hashem, you automatically think differently, you speak differently, you behave differently. So the life of a tzaddik is someone, you see the tzaddik, you see a godly man. You see God over him. Yiras Hashem. That is the second component. And again, every one of these components, we can have many endless amount of classes to discuss it, to understand it, to start living it, because this is real life on a spiritual level. I mean, obviously this is a tidbits, but this is what life is all about. A third of real living is Yiras Hashem. That's the second component. What's the third component? The third component is Avas Hashem, loving God. Loving God. Now what does that mean? The life of a tzaddik is that what? Who's he in love with? Not sushi and a steak and some other materialistic or physical pleasure. God. Now think about it. Anything physical that you love is finite. And in matter of fact, Kabbalah it says, Tainuk Tmini, any pleasure that's consistent will eventually cease to be a pleasure. We can't love something forever physical. Everything has a shelf life. With God, you can love forever and ever and ever. So the life of a tzaddik is what? Faith, awe, and love. Which, by the way, the essence of chesed, the whole idea of chesed, to be kind and to be considerate and giving, that all comes from which attribute? It all comes from the attribute of ahava. So anything that we have, a fiery chesed, where does that come from? It comes from ahava. So that is the life of a tzaddik. Now, so the tzaddik, when he lived his whole life, what kind of life did he live? Again, we're not just talking the physical life. What was his real life? Faith, awe, love. That was his life. So now the Alter Rebbe explains, this is based on the Zohar, what does that mean when the Tzadik dies? The Shavak Chayim, guess what? True, maybe the body leaves. But his life, what he stood for, faith, awe, and love, he leaves right here. It's here. Who does he leave it for? He leaves it for his students. Notice he's writing a letter to the students of Reb Mendel of Horodak, and he's telling them, this what your Rebbe lived for, he left it for you. He left you the greatest gift. The gift of living a life of faith, of awe, and love. But now the question is, how do we get that? He left it over. How do we get that? So he uses a word, I'll say it in Hebrew, I'll translate it. And he says like this. When you're mekusher, when you're connected to the tzaddik, then you're able to draw from it. Like for example, let's say there's a reservoir, 100-gallon tank of water, and it's sitting there for anyone to take. You walk over, you knock on the tank, you say, I want to have water. Are you getting water? You're not getting water. Why not? You can knock and you can beg and you can plead, you can cry, right? You can have faith, it's not coming out. What do you have to do? The tank has a hose bib. You have to connect some kind of hose to it. You open the faucet and then it comes out. So in other words, you have to connect yourself to the tzaddik. Yeah. You have to connect yourself to the tzaddik. When you connect to the tzaddik, then you can have his faith, his awe, and his love. How do you connect to the tzaddik? Very simple. You read his teachings. You follow his instructions that he left. Like for example, the Rebbe gave us instructions. He told us, you want to connect to me? Very simple. Study my teachings. Or for example, he instructed us to learn chitas every day, a little bit chumash every day of the parsha, say the psalms of the day of the month, learn some Tanya, read his book Hayom Yom. Or for example, he told us to study Rambam every day. So when we are connected to the Rebbe, which means we follow his instructions, guess what? We will receive from that awe, faith, and love from all three of them. So that is one way to connect to the tzaddik. Another way that he says is to connect to the tzaddik is by having ava rabba and avas olam to the tzaddik. What does that mean? When you have this huge love for the tzaddik, how do you have love for the tzaddik? You think about the tzaddik, what kind of holy man he is, what kind of godly person he is, how he impacted your life, how he impacted other people's lives, and you love him. I mean, you love the tzaddik in a real way. Not only in a great way, but avas olam means it doesn't stop. It's consistent. It's not like today I love him and tomorrow I don't. You love him 24/7, active, non-active, conscious, subconscious, and as long as you love the tzaddik, you'll be connected to the tzaddik, and therefore everything that he left over, which was his life, which is faith, awe, and love, you're going to have it.
Becomes yours.
Exactly. That is the second way. And then Alter Rebbe brings in a third way, and here obviously, it's a third way. We're going up the ladder, and he uses. On one hand, it looks like the same words, but he adds something to it, and he says like this. We use the term before hiskashrus, connecting, but he adds the words. We use the word before ava, but he adds another word. What's the word? Emes, truth. You have to connect to the tzaddik in a true way. Not okay. I'll do it again. That's first level. You're connecting. You love him. Here he's saying is you connect to the tzaddik in what kind of way? In an emistic way, in a true way, in a real way, a sincere way, being vulnerable and really connecting to the tzaddik. Loving the tzaddik in what kind of way? In an emistic way, in a true way. Now, what happens, as the Alter Rebbe says, very simple. So you connect to the tzaddik by learning his teachings, by listening to his instructions, by loving the tzaddik, basic level, and then obviously emes even deeper. So the Alter brings down the age-old Kabbalistic idea, which we discussed in class many times, which is called kamayim haponim elponim, which means very, very simple. You're standing in front of a mirror, and you put on a big smile. What do you get back?
A big smile.
A big smile. God forbid you're standing in front of the mirror and you have a frown on your face. What do you get back?
A big frown.
A big frown. So whatever you put in, that's what you get out.
Yeah.
So in other words, the mirror doesn't have a choice. You create the reality the mirror is going to show you. You're in full control. So the Alter Rebbe says, when you connect to the Tzadik, when you love the Tzadik, guess what? The gates are opened.
Back.
You're going to get it back.
Yeah.
The Tzadik doesn't have to agree or not agree. The flow doesn't have. You do your part. You connect to the Tzadik. You take out one of the Rebbe's books and you study it, and you read how he wants you to live your life, and you live your life that way, and you appreciate, like we do in Shabbat here. We read the Rebbe stories and we learn to love the Rebbe. So what happens when we love the Rebbe? Guess what happens? All those things come automatically flowing to us. That is the meaning. The Shavik Chaim, all those things that he left over will come to us by us doing our part. What is our part? Connecting to the Rebbe, following his instructions, living a godly life that he wanted us to, praying that we were supposed to, loving the Rebbe, loving what the Rebbe stood for, etc. Now, then the Alter goes even deeper now, and he brings from the Zohar. And he brings from the Zohar says like this. I'll say it in Hebrew, actually in the Aramaic, and I'll translate it. And he says like this. The Tzadika, the Ispater, when a Tzadik, a righteous person, passes away, Ishtakach Bekulu Almin, he's found, and here's the key, Bekulu Almin means in all the worlds, all meaning heaven and down here, Yater mi b'chayayu, more than when he was alive. In other words, like this. What the Zohar is saying is as follows. When a tzaddik passes away, he is found in all the worlds. In other words, think that he was in this world, he passed away, he's going to the higher worlds. What does the Zohar say? He passes away, his soul goes up. Where is he found? In all the worlds. The world he's going to and the world down here. That's point number one. The Zohar is saying point number one is that he's found in all the worlds, means says even down here. And then the Zohar adds another important point. Yater mi b'chayayu, more, greater than he was alive. So when he was alive, let's say from 1 to 10, whatever the number is, he was, use the number, let's say 5. Afterwards he goes up to a 10. Two important pieces the Zohar says. And he continues, the Zohar says, and he draws down light, and I'll say it in Hebrew and I'll translate it, from a place called Hasada, the field, Asher Berchei Hashem, that God blessed. What is the field referring to? So we know when the tzaddik passes away, his soul goes up to heaven, and we know there's 4 worlds. Atzilut, the highest world, which is closest to God. It means God is mainly felt. There's Bria, there's a creation already, so there's more of a concealment. Yitzira, more of a concealment. And this world, Asiya, the greatest concealment. So when the tzaddik passes away, he goes up from Asiya to Yitzira to Bria to the world of Atzilut, and the place that's called a Sada, a field, is the place called Malchut. Because we know in the Sfirot, there's 10 Sfirot starting from either Keser or Chachma. It goes through the 3 intellectual Sfirot, the emotional Sfirot, and down until Malchut. So the light from Asad Sheberch Hashem, which is referring to Malchus of Atzilut, comes down to this world. Now, what is Malchut of Atzilut called? So the Alter Rebbe says Malchut of Atzilut is called Gan Eden, the Garden of Eden. Now, Garden of Eden. Now, but even though it's Malchut of Atzilut, which is the Garden of Eden, it's only Malchut, and we know on top of Malchut there's other Sfirot. For example, the intellectual Sfirot, there's the emotional Sfirot called Zah, the small face, the 6 Midot. So the Alter Rebbe says that Zah of Atzilut, the 6 emotional Sfirot come into Malchus, and that causes the energy to come down back to this world. And the Alter, again, still quoting heavy Kabbalah. Obviously, it's a lot of abstract stuff here. We're going to soon explain it a little more down to earth. I'm telling you the way the Alter Rebbe says it. And from there, again, from the place that God blessed, Hasada Sheberch Hashem, which is referring to Malchut of Atzilut, that has Zohar of Atzilut in there, which is called Gan Eden, that comes down and gives life force to this world, both on a spiritual level and on a physical level. And the Alter Rebbe quotes from the Zohar, and I'm going to read it in Hebrew, that Tzadika Maginon Al Alma, which means that Tzadik protects this world. Even more so when they pass away, And matter of fact, what the Zohar is saying is that if the tzaddik would not pray from heaven, from Malchus of Atzilut, for this world, you know what happened in this world? We wouldn't be. We wouldn't be. So the fact that we're here physically, the fact that we're here spiritually, and we have everything that we have, comes from the prayer of the tzaddik, even after he passes away, on the greatest places.
Oh my.
Now, but the Alter Rebbe finishes off, again, still quoting from the Zohar, those that are closest to the tzaddik, his students, the ones that study his teachings, follow in his footsteps, and love him, they receive this channel of blessings first. Okay, now, this is obviously heavy Kabbalah, and that's the first part of the chapter. Now the Alter Rebbe is going to explain a little bit what we just learned. And the Alter Rebbe explains as follows. What did we just learn? The Alter Rebbe quoted from the Zohar that says, and I'll say it again in Hebrew and I'll translate it, that tzadika the spater, that a tzaddik that passes away, ishtakach bekula almin, is found in all the worlds. Yatir b'machayayu, more than when he was alive. So the Alter asks a simple question. One second. Tzaddik was living in this world. He passed away. So if you ask someone, simple English, where's the tzaddik now? In heaven. So why are you saying that he's found here? He's not here.
His energy.
Huh?
His energy then comes to us.
I understand, but why are you saying that he's found in all the worlds? He's not here in this world. He went up to heaven. And then you're saying he's here more than he was alive? If you want to say in the higher worlds, he's now there more than he was alive, it makes sense. Now he's there. But we're saying, no, he passed away. He's not here. So fine, you want to say his energy is there, I get that. But you're saying it's even greater than when he was alive. What does that mean?
Teachings.
So the Alter Rebbe explains like this. He says, based on, again, the Maimer Chazal, that the sages taught us, where it says, the Shavak Chayim L'chol Chai, that when a tzaddik passes away, he leaves over life to all those that are alive, which we already explained before, that Chayim means not necessarily physical life, it means spiritual life. And what is spiritual life? And let's see if you guys remember. A life of faith, a life of awe, and a life of love.
Yeah.
Those three levels. Now, so that is considered Chaim. Welcome, come have a seat. That is considered life. Life is, again, life of faith, life of awe, and life of love. That is the life of a tzaddik. Now, the Alter Rebbe adds now and explains, this idea of faith, love, and awe, we mentioned before already, how many worlds are there? There are 4 worlds. There's Asiya, we'll start from the bottom, this physical world. There's Yetzirah, the world of formation. It's already more spiritual, less concealment. There's the world of Bria, creation, which is already more revelation, less concealment. And the world of Atzilut, which God is mainly pretty much heavy revealed. It's not the infinite light, but there's much greater revelation there. So the Alter Rebbe explains, on every single world, there exists faith, there exists awe, and there exists love. Obviously, faith in each world is different. In other words, for example, in this world where God is mainly concealed, so faith takes on one dynamic. However, as you go up to more of a spiritual world, faith takes on a whole different dynamic of faith. And the same thing also as you climb up the worlds. The same thing also with awe, and the same thing also with love for Hashem. Now, so on each level, there's the 3 components. So therefore, when a tzaddik lived in this world, now let's make it practical. When a tzaddik lived in this world, what was his life? His life was a life of what? Faith, awe, and love. Now, but he lived in this physical world. So if you wanted to connect to the tzaddik in this physical world, how do you connect to him? How do you connect to the tzaddik in this physical world, to his faith, love, and awe? So you connected, the tzaddik was a human being. He had a godly soul. The godly soul is in his body, and you connected to the soul of the tzaddik. So let's first talk about the soul. We know that in the soul that we have, every one of us have a godly soul. There's 5 levels to the soul. There's the lowest level, and again, when we say low and high in the spiritual world, we're talking about not physical high and low, we're talking about spiritual godly energy. That means like this. When we say the lowest level of the neshama, which is called nefesh, that means it's not as the godliness is not as revealed. It's more the survival mode. In other words, we live, we survive, we have to have nefesh. Because if our nefesh was not lit up, we wouldn't live. We wouldn't exist. So nefesh, it gives us survival instincts. So that's the lowest level. As we live more of an inspired life, we activate ruach, which is the second level of the neshama. As we live more of a godly life, we activate the neshama, which by the way, even though the neshama is called the whole package, but the third level is called neshama. And then there's the higher level chaya, and then another high level yechida. And again, talking about the neshama, all the different levels, it requires another whole class, maybe many classes about the neshama. But here's the point. So when the tzaddik lives in this world, and you want to connect to the tzaddik, to the righteous tzaddik, so you see the physical body of the tzaddik, and you're able to connect to the nefesh, only the lowest level of the tzaddik, through his speech, what he tells you, and through his thoughts that he shares with you. Which in the words of Kabbalah, that's called, you're getting a ray of the tzaddik. So in other words, when the tzaddik's alive, and the tzaddik lives a life of faith and awe and love, and you're connecting physically, you go meet the tzaddik, or you read the tzaddik's teaching while the tzaddik is alive, the closest you can get to the tzaddik is the lowest level of his soul, which is the level of nefesh. And what part of nefesh? Only a ray that comes from the tzaddik. Now, therefore, since we're only connecting to the level of nefesh, an array of the tzaddik, so therefore we know it says that it takes 40 years to get full comprehension of a teaching of the tzaddik. So if you learn something from a tzaddik teaches you, guess what? In 40 years from now, you'll get full comprehension. Why? Because you only got a race. It takes a while. It takes time to develop, to go deeper and deeper. It takes 40 years. Rebbe would quote it many, many times. After 40 years, now I understand what it says. Why? Because we can only get so much. And with time, obviously, we can go deeper and deeper. Now,
I better get going.
Absolutely. Now, pay attention. This is heavy Kabbalah, and it's really intriguing. Okay. And this is the major connect piece, which we have to get. What happens when a tzaddik passes away? So I gave you an image of what happens when the tzaddik is alive. Again, when the tzaddik's alive, remember, the nefesh is in the body. We connect to the tzaddik, we're connecting to the nefesh, which is in the body, which is only a ray of his teachings, which comes through his speech, his thoughts, and it takes 40 years to get full comprehension. That's when the tzaddik's alive. Now, what happens when the tzaddik passes away? Pay attention, this is very powerful. So when a person passes away, they bury the person into the ground. So what are they burying in the ground? The body. The physical body. What also goes in the body, in the ground, besides the body? Also the nefesh. A certain component of the lowest level of the soul, the nefesh, the part that you connected to, that goes in the ground as well. Now, the ruach of the tzaddik, which is the next level of the neshama. This is spooky stuff. You're going to have some nice dreams tonight. It's good, it's okay. What happens? The ruach of the tzaddik starts making its journey to the world of Yetzirah. You with me? You feeling it? If you connect, you'll feel it. To the world of Bria. You're feeling it, right? And to the world of Atzilut. Right? Into where? As we mentioned before, to the level of Malchut. Which is called, what did we say before Malchut Atzilut is called? It's called Gan Eden. Now, so what happens now? So the tzaddik, again, the body went in the ground, the nefesh went in the ground, the ruach, which is the spirit of the tzaddik, goes into the world of Malchut of Atzilut. So now, what happens after the tzaddik passes away? The body's in the ground, the nefesh is in the ground. Are you connecting to the body and the nefesh? No. What are you connecting to? To the ruach of the tzaddik. Very powerful. The ruach is already the essence of the tzaddik, And where's the essence of the tzaddik? We're in Gan Eden. Now, we said before that the faith, awe, and love exists on all levels. But now, where did the faith, love, and awe go to? It went with the ruach up to malchut of atzilut. So when you're connecting to the tzaddik after he passes away, very powerful, you're not connecting to the nefesh. You're connecting to the ruach the way it's in atzilut. So therefore what happens now is, where do you get from the tzaddik? From the ray, which takes 40 years to comprehend? Or do you get from the essence of the tzaddik? You get from the essence of the tzaddik. When the tzaddik was alive, you got from a ray of the tzaddik. It takes 40 years to develop it. When the tzaddik passes away, the nefesh stays on the ground. The ruach gets elevated to Gan Eden, malchut v'atzilut, which comes with it his faith, his awe, and his love. And now when you connect to the tzaddik, what are you connecting to? Not a ray, the essence. It's like touching the live wire. You're connecting to the essence of the tzaddik. So the Alter Rebbe says, one second, you're going to say, where are you getting this from? You're telling me that malchut of atzilut, Gan Eden, is in this world. We're living in this world. Like, where's this coming from? And I'll just relax. I'll show you. We all know the famous story that when Jacob, went to get the blessings from his father Yitzchok, so everyone knows, says that when he walked in, the Reach of Gan Eden, the spirit of Gan Eden walked in with him. So we see clearly from the Torah and the commentaries that Gan Eden can be felt in this world. We physical human beings could connect to Gan Eden, like we see in the Torah. Not only that, the Alter brings in the Zohar from the Kabbalah that says like this: around every person, the energy of Gan Eden is there. Every person. If we had the power to see, if we only had the power to see, the problem is we don't see. You know, you think the glasses help you see. We're not talking physical seeing. We only had the power to see would be whoa. But around every single person, you have the aura of Gan Eden. Now, when a person has thoughts, we're talking obviously good thoughts, and you say holy words of Torah and prayer and kind words, and you talk about mitzvot, you're connecting now to that energy of Gan Eden that's around you. Because Gan Eden exists in this world, it's around you. Maybe you might not see it, but it's there. How do you connect to it? And how do you record stuff in your spiritual Gan Eden? By studying Torah, by praying, by doing mitzvah. That's when you study Torah, you should say the words. When you pray, you should say the words. You should have the proper intention, because you're creating Gan Eden. And matter of fact, you can live a whole life, pray, study, and do mitzvot, and you say, I don't feel it. It's okay. It's okay. You don't feel it. It's like you know, you work out, and you don't see it, and all of a sudden, boom, you feel great. It takes a while. So the same thing happens like this. You can work a whole life, pray, study, you don't see it. That's okay, because unfortunately we have physical human beings. But the minute someone passes away, all of a sudden, everything you've done, you see everything recorded. Not one thing, not one mitzvah or prayer or Torah that you've done a whole life does not get recorded. Today we're learning, because everything's recorded in every room. There's cameras, there's motion detectors and sensors, etc. Guess what? Every time you say a kind word, it gets recorded for you in Gan Eden. You might not see it now, but after 120, they're going to spit out for you all the millions of kind things that you said, all the prayers that you did, and all the Torah you studied. And that's why, don't be short-sighted. You want the results today, you want the rewards today, it's cheap rewards. You want the rewards when Mashiach comes, not now. Hakeren kayem esloilam hava. You want to have the rewards when Mashiach comes. So what happens is, when you pray, and when you study, and when you do mitzvot, everything gets recorded in your spiritual Gan Eden. After 120, boom, you get connected to it. And you have full access, you see. The problem is, unfortunately, we don't see today. We don't see the way it's actually putting away spiritual bank accounts. Huge bank accounts we're creating. We don't see it. If we saw it, not there over here, the Rebbe brings many places, if we saw the value of, for example, reading Psalms, we wouldn't go for a second of the day, 24/7, without reading Psalms or studying Torah. The problems, unfortunately, we don't see. But once you learn and you know the truth, guess what? Now there's no excuse. Pray, study, do mitzvot, because guess what? You're creating huge bank accounts. Unfortunately, and the Alter Rebbe brings it, that the opposite is also true. That what happens when you have negative thoughts? You know what I'm saying? You have negative thoughts? That creates energy which will greet you after 120 in hell. So therefore, you want to be careful not saying anything negative, doing anything negative, because that will create, unfortunately, your negative bank account for you after 120 in hell. Now, so what happens is the Alter Rebbe explains. So when we connect after the Tzadik passes away, we connect to what part of the Tzadik, the Ruach of the Tzadik, and we receive the essence of the Tzadik's faith, awe, and love. Now, what happens now to the Tzaddik after 120? He doesn't stop. He keeps on growing. So the Tzaddik now not only is serving God from his Ruach, but he's also serving God from his Neshama, which is a higher level of the soul. And then we're able to connect not only from the Ruach of the Tzaddik, we're able to connect even from the Neshama of the Tzaddik. Now, so what happens is, even though after 120 the Tzaddik is growing, like we said, he goes from Nefesh to Ruach to Neshama, etc., but the fact is that the Kedusha, the holiness that Tzaddik accomplished in this world, that never leaves here. The Kedusha always stays here. And therefore, when we connect to the Tzaddik over here, into this world, because the Kedusha never left this place. Even though the Tzaddik is going through an elevation process, but nevertheless, the Kedusha never leaves. And therefore, by creating a hiskashrus, a connection to the Tzaddik, whether when he was alive or even after he passes away, we have the power to draw down this powerful energy of love, awe, and faith in God. And as the Zohar says, the Alter Rebbe quotes from the Zohar, and the Zohar says like this, that the way to draw it down, there's one key master key. How do you draw it down? We all want to draw down the greatest blessing. There's one key master key that will draw it all down. And I'll quote the Zohar and I'll translate. It says like this, the Ruach, the Re'usa, the Liba, Amshech Ruach Mil Eila. In other words, the way to draw down all these powerful energies is only coming from a place of love. When you love the Tzaddik and you love the godly life, then you will draw down all the powerful components, as we mentioned before, of love, awe, and faith. And as the Alter says, that the way to do it is you have to work hard with your body, work hard with your soul. It's not easy, it's an avoda. But he finishes off and he says, based on the what it says in the Talmud, Yagata umatzasa taman, you put in the effort. That means you work hard with your soul, you work hard physically with your body to connect to the Tzaddik, and to live a life of Torah and mitzvot the way the Tzadik taught us and instructed us. We will bring down all these powerful, great blessings, all the way from Gan Eden HaTachton, which is the lower level of Gan Eden. But Yagata Matzasa means that if you work hard, not only you receive from Gan Eden HaTachton, but you will also receive from Gan Eden HaElyon. So that is the first component. What the Alter Rebbe is saying over here is that when a person connects to the Tzaddik, what happens is you draw down from the Tzaddik's energy down to this world, and that gives you huge and great blessings. Take a break here because you want to switch, right? Okay, he wants to switch. Okay, so as we learned till now, the Alter Rebbe is explaining that when we are connected to the Tzaddik, which means we follow his teachings, we follow his instructions, we learn his Torah, and we love the Tzaddik in a real way, then we have the power to draw down from the life that he lived, the life of faith in God, awe in God, loving God, and that becomes our life in a real way. That means we start living what kind of life? A life that we have complete faith in a real way, and it really helps us in our life. And a life that we're living with awe of Hashem, which gives us a godly life, and a life that gives us a love for Hashem, and that comes internalized. Now the Alter Rebbe says he's going to take us to a whole new level. What happens after the Tzaddik passes away? knows the dשבק chayim. What does it mean? He gives over us our life, and the Alter explains like this: that there's two words. I'm going to say it in Hebrew, and I'll translate. There's something which is called pnimi, and there's something which is called makif. What does that mean, pnimi and makif? Pnimi means something we can internalize. So up until now, the Alter Rebbe explained that we have the power, by connecting to the Tzadik, to do in a pneumistic way, internalize what the Tzadik's life of faith and love, that we can live in a real way, faith on love. But then there's something which is called makif. What does makif mean? Makif means when you have a huge blessing, huge. So it's not possible for us, with our finite capabilities, to internalize it. It's too strong for us. On the other hand, it's huge. It's nice to have a powerful blessing, which doesn't maybe help us in an internalized way, but the blessing is there for us in a makiftic way, and it allows us to experience something really, really great and something special. Okay, so the Alter says like this. That what happens like this. So when the Tzadik lived in this world, and he prayed, and he studied, and he lived a life of faith and love and awe for Hashem. So what happens when the Tzadik passes away, so he leaves this world, and he goes up to heaven with everything that he accomplished, and he goes into a place which we said before is called Malchut of Atzilut, which over here he calls it Chakal Tapuchin Kadishin. It's a Kabbalistic term for Malchut of Atzilut. And over there, it draws down huge light and huge blessing because of everything he accomplished in this world, all in the world of Malchut of Atzilut. And because that Tzadik created this huge light, this light, which is very, very powerful, comes back down to this world, and it comes to the Tzadik, to all his students that follow in his way, but it's something which does not get internalized. Because before we spoke about the way it's internalized. Now we live a life more of faith, more of being awe of Hashem, things that we can relate to, love for Hashem. Here, the light is so strong we cannot internalize it. But what it does is, it creates sparks of godly light within us, which is drawn down from the Tzadik, which causes us to do tshuva, which causes us to repent, and which causes us to study Torah on a very, very deep level. In other words, like this. There's times in our life is good. We get out, we pray, we study, we do mitzvot, and everything is wonderful. We have faith, we have awe, we have love. But then there's times in our life where we have ups and downs in life. Sometimes we're in the mood, we're not in the mood. But by the Tzadik creating this powerful makiv energy that's floating around, so it's like when you're falling asleep, so to speak, on the wheel, the Tzadik sends you a light. It gives a flash, and you go, oh my gosh, let me wake up. So that flash inspires you to do tshuva, to return to Hashem, or it inspires you, sometimes when you're not in the mood to do a mitzvah, it inspires you to do the mitzvah. Or for example, you're not in the mood of being nice or kind or generous, and it inspires you. You say, well, I don't know where that came from. It's the strangest thing ever. I was totally not in the mood, or actually I didn't want to do it. And also had this moment of I saw the light. Where's that coming from? That's coming from the light of the Tzadik. So the Alter Rebbe calls it, and I'll say it in Hebrew, I'll translate, it's called Gidule Gidulin. What does Gidule Gidulin mean? That what Gidulin means, it's a growth from a growth. What does that mean? When the Tzadik lived in this world, and he lived a life of Amunah and Avin Yira, now when he passes away, all this goes up to Chakal Tapukin Kadishin, Malchus of Atzilus, and over there it creates this huge light. So the first growth is that it created this huge light up in Chakal Tapukin Kadishin and Malchus of Atzilus. Now that comes back down to all his students that are connected to him, and it creates a light within you, which causes you to repent and do mitzvot. So it creates a double effect. And this powerful ray of light, we don't see it, because if we see it, it would be too strong for us. So it's concealed and contracted. Like I'll give an example, like the sunlight, which basically gives off, which is the source of light of all the stars. Or like, for example, he says, Moshe Rabbeinu, right? Moshe Rabbeinu, when he passed away, so even though he passed away, but the light of Moshe Rabbeinu gives light and life force to every one of the 600,000 general souls, and even the sub-souls that come from there, which all get a light from Moshe Rabbeinu. We're all connected to Moshe Rabbeinu on some level, maybe on a subconscious level. But that powerful light is still there. So he says the same thing applies to the Tzadik.
But it's concealed.
Concealed. It's too strong. The same thing applies to the students of the Tzadik and the students of the students of the Tzadik, that we all receive from that ray of light, the Makif light, based on our studying the Torah of the Tzadik and serving Hashem the way the Tzaddik inspires us to do, and therefore we will obviously get from this powerful light. So in other words, like this, what is the Alter Rebbe saying in this chapter? What the Alter Rebbe is sharing to the students of the Magid, of the Reb Mendel Horodak, that were broken because the Reb Mendel of Vitebsk passed away, he said to them like this: the truth is, what are you concerned about? You were connected to him. You were connected to the Tzaddik. He inspired you to study Torah, to do mitzvot, to pray. You had all your blessings. So the Alter says that's true. That's and now you don't have that. But guess what? You have your teacher in a much greater way. Why? Because when he was alive, you connected to a ray of him, which takes years to comprehend and get to the depth of it. But now, if you continue going in the footsteps of your teacher by studying his teachings, following all the things he taught you how to live a godly life, guess what? You'll get the essence of your teacher. And therefore you'll have a much stronger connection to him, and a much stronger connection to the real life of the Tzaddik, which is a life of faith, love, and awe. That is part number one that he says. Part number two, he says, not only will you get all that, but if you continue to being connected to the Tzaddik, and you continue to loving the Tzaddik and the Tzaddik and his teachings and whatever he stood for, what will happen is you'll have this spiritual protection. Maybe it's not internalized, but that spiritual protection will stand for you and with you at moments that will inspire you to do tshuva, to return to God on a greater level. Or at moments it will inspire you to do more mitzvot, or do mitzvot better, etc. So in other words, like this. This is chapter 27, Perek Chav Zayin. This letter, powerful letter, is Kabbalistic letter with all the explanation of the Alter Rebbe. So just to bring it full circle, because we said this is also a pre-Gimmul Tamuz Farbrengen, and we discussed some points that we said we're going to try to learn from this chapter how to take away practical messages. So the question is, what is a Rebbe? So I think it's obvious based on this chapter, at least we're talking now, not my opinion, we're talking about what the Alter Rebbe's opinion is. What is a Rebbe? A Rebbe is somebody who lives a life, a godly life. And what's the definition of a godly life? A life of faith in God, a life of awe in God, a life of love in God. That is what a Rebbe is. Now, the next question we had, can anyone be a Chosid? And the answer is for sure. As long as you want to connect to the Rebbe, you want to love the Rebbe, you want to study his teachings, you want to follow in his footsteps, you can be a Chosid. And you will benefit, huge benefits, because you're going to get a great life, a life of awe, love, faith in God. Also, you'll have this mak of energy that will wake you up when you, God forbid, sometimes fall asleep. Inspire you to do tshuva, inspire you to do mitzvot. And we discuss how can you live a spiritual life. Spiritual life is very simple. Working on our faith in Hashem, being in awe of Hashem, seeing God in everything in our life, loving Hashem, doing chesed, doing kindness. And the last question we had was the secret to how Chabad is growing so strong since Gimmul Tamuz. And I think, and again, this is all based on the Alter Rebbe's teachings, is that what happens is very simple. When the Rebbe was alive, the Rebbe was very powerful. But according to the way the Alter Rebbe explained it, after somebody passes away, they become even more powerful. Why? Because now, not only do we get from the ray of the Rebbe, but we actually get from the essence of the Rebbe. And when you're getting from the essence of the Rebbe, and as the Alter Rebbe explains, the Rebbe is constantly spiritually growing, nefesh, ruach, neshama, on the highest levels, and he's constantly sending down that powerful energy to his chasidim that are constantly connecting to him. So in other words, it takes two ingredients. One is we as chasidim, we as followers of the Rebbe, we have to constantly connect to the Rebbe and love the Rebbe and what he stood for, and then the Rebbe will continue to send us powerful energy, and this way Chabad continue to grow, and the ultimate growth is when we'll all merit, when we'll all see the revelation of Mashiach here in Galut, and hopefully it'll be before we even finish the class tonight.
You are my Rebbe.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.